Thank you all for meeting with me. You're all doing some wonderful work destroying the world, but I think it's probably time for us to reevaluate.
Yeah, sorry for the interruption, but I think we're in the wrong meeting. We're not here to destroy the world. We're here to save it. You see, we are some of the leading leaders of liberal causes, and I'm with the Human Rights Campaign, who focus on LGBTQ plus and trans rights. You see, I have the equal sign to let you know that I'm a good person.
Oh, excuse me, women's reproductive rights.
Climate.
Free Palestine. Open borders.
I misspoke before. You guys are not destroying the world, okay? You are saving the world.
Whoa, what's up with those scare quotes?
Pretty sure I didn't use scare quotes when I said saving the world.
Again.
The important thing to keep in mind is that there's a big election coming up, and you and I, we're all on the same page, okay? So if we want Biden to win, he needs to win in order for us to save the world. If we want Biden to win, you folks, how can I say this? You might need to tone it down just.
Tone down what?
Oh, that's a good question. You're women's reproductive rights, right? Okay. Excellent branding, by the way. It's much easier on the ears than baby murder. So kudos to you on that one. But opposing any restrictions all the way through to the 9th month, I mean, you see how you're kind of tipping your hand, right? Makes people think, wait, maybe they actually want to kill babies. And we do, obviously.
No, we don't.
Oh.
No, we don't. We don't.
Right. We don't. But you see how it can kind of look that way. So that's all I'm saying. You know, let's tone it down. And you, immigration, clearly we don't want a completely open border that undermines any sense of national sovereignty, driving down wages for the working class and overtaxing the welfare state. So let's go a bit easy there too. I mean, why not something like this? Why not something like, diversity is
Are you trying to say diversity is our strength?
Yes! How do you say that without laughing? Oh my gosh. I can't even get through it. This is head and moi. My sides. My goodness. Okay, what about you? Pro-Palestine. You are, I'm going to say this. You're kind of coming across like you just want to wipe Israel off the map and kill all the Jews.
We do want to wipe Israel off the map and kill all the Jews.
Of course, yes. And that's awesome. I'm all for that. I love that. But you need to pretend like you don't want to wipe Israel off the map and kill all the Jews.
Why?
Excuse me?
I mean, we're pretty clear in our position, and most young people and everyone on college campuses, and half the Democratic Party, of course, still support us.
Yeah, it's cool now.
You may have a point there. You might be the only person in here that can be as evil as you want to be and get away with it. All right, still, let's think about tactics. Okay, do you think that occupying bridges and blocking traffic is somehow winning people over to your cause?
Yeah, and making people hate us by blocking traffic is our thing. He's stealing our thing!
You're not stealing your thing. You must die. We will kill you all!
See, this is what I'm talking about. I mean, okay, I love the homicidal thing that you got going on there. I really dig it, okay? But maybe market it just a little bit differently. Like the serial killer that everyone thinks is such a sweet guy, you know? He's got 27 bodies in the basement, but he's like, coaching Little League. That's what I want. Be that guy.
Death to America.
You know, the funny thing is, you don't even look Middle Eastern. Am I wrong, people? Am I wrong?
I'm not. I actually grew up on Long Island, but my parents sent me to college. Death to America.
HRC guy, you have been going over the top as well.
Well, it's important for us, they, them, to be accepted just like everyone else.
Yes, of course. And convincing people that they're intolerant for not wanting men to get naked in women's locker rooms. I guess that's genius. I mean, come on, it's next level stuff. All right, but insisting that your children be mutilated. I mean, come on, let's turn people off, you guys. I mean, not everyone, obviously, but until the election, can we just all pretend for a few months not to be crazy, lunatic, homicidal extremists?
Extremist? No, it's my body, my Donald J. Trump. Donald Trump.
You will obey me. Sorry. Glad we're all on the same page, though. So, how do you do it? You know? When I do evil stuff, it seems like nobody likes me. When you do it, everyone finds you sympathetic.
Well, see, my people are oppressed victims. So we can rape, murder, and call for genocide, and it's pretty much totally justified.
Well done, man. Well done.
Hey, you!
That is one of the funniest Babylon Bee skits that actually bang on. There's so much in our world that is disguised as help or good stuff. And then the deception is usually just single word deceptions. I'll give you an example. Did you know not a single piece of election software, or for that matter, election hardware, is peer reviewed? What's peer reviewed? Well, you provide it to other people to look at it, analyze it, and decide if it's good. Did you know in our elections, there is no such thing? Not for software, not for hardware. But then you'll find people that will throw that out there. Well, this is not peer reviewed, when it's not even done to begin with. That's why almost all of this is a war of words. Absolutely a war of words. And they bank on you not knowing the truth. Hey, folks, do me a favor. Raise a finger and share this program. My job's to make you the smartest patriot in the room. We're going to weed through this crap, culture, race, and American politics. Today, we're going to do it with a history lesson that I think you'll be interested in. Today's program is brought to you by the fine folks at Goldco. Here's what I'm asking you to do. It's very simple. Just go, right? Just go to jovanlovesgold.com. That's it. That's it. jovanlovesgold.com. I just want you to request your free gold and silver kit. That's it. Request your gold and silver kit today, because now is the time to protect your money. It's really important. And I do this with my partners at Goldco because, like, if you have a 401k, an IRA, a retirement savings account, and you had a crisis in your family, you wanted to go get a hold of your money, they're going to try, in some instances, to ding you a penalty of 50%, but it's your money. This is why you have to understand this workaround that is afforded you by law. This is not about investing in gold and silver. That's something different. This is about a certain amount of protection with gold and silver. It's very easy. Just check it out. Make sure you feed your brain. Make sure you know. And at this time of year, when we're headed through the deep cold and everything else, and isn't it funny? You wanted cooler days, you wanted fall, you got fall, all of a sudden we get into cold and you're, I need summer again. Well, now is the time for you to plan your garden. Plan, P-L-A-N. So when you get ready to plant, you can do it in a very creative way. You got a lot of options. But if you want to do something that can produce for decades, you can design this and produce for decades. It's called a food forest. We authored the definitive Bible on it. All the rat bastards ran out and cloned it. That's why I won't do ebooks anymore. Those are junk. Make sure you get the one that's the authorized one, the official one, that gives you everything, including did you know that God made assassin bugs? Yeah, assassin bugs to eat the bad bugs that eat your plants. Yeah, they're all in there. Also, we taught you how to do cool things with fruit. Some of you never plant fruit because you just don't want to wait 6 or 7 years for the fruit trees to mature. Well, we show you how to hack it and do it within the first season. That's in our giant fruit and small spaces. And then if you want to plant and not dig and not weed, we have a very simple Make Life Easier series book for that. It's all about cutting the crap in your life. But I do believe you need to get yourself protected and take care of business. This is the time you got to get really selfish about you and your family. That's the one thing where you can make the single biggest dent in this bad system, taking care of yourself and your family. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to cover some amazing history. You might not have known this story. You might not have known this story of the real life battle over ballots. And these guys pulled out guns and everything. All hell broke loose. Yes, all hell broke loose because they absolutely knew their elections were stolen. We'll get started in about 2 minutes right after this.
Not fixing 2020 will damn our nation forever. The historic Maricopa County full forensic audit effort processed 20,895,610 digital and forensic images of varying formats, resulted in 208 million individual evidence-proof files. The system processed over 58 billion forensic measurements, resulting in over 2 trillion individual base computations. No hopium, no hype, just hardcore forensic evidence. Please make sure the Maricopa County Full Forensic Audit Archives survive. Donate now. So if you want what happened in the 2020 election fixed, then please donate to protect and secure this historic evidence. We can't do it without you. We need you. America needs you. Our future needs you. Please donate now.
Warning. The following program has been rated Gilligaff and is intended for open-minded audiences. If the truth offends you, or if you are allergic to focused intensity, intellectual athleticism, or the occasional F-bomb or even irreverent humor, please switch off now. If your delicate sensibilities need to be worried about or addressed, might we recommend the Underwater Basket Weaving channel to you? Otherwise, sit back, enjoy the wisdom, insight, and wicked sense of humor.
Cut the crap. How many times a day do you want to say that to politicians, the elite, the loony liberals, the fake news media, and the gender-confused, emotional socialist snowflake crowd? Cut the crap is your secret weapon for fighting for our freedoms and our great republic. It all begins with a massive mental enema, freeing you from the toxic news and politically correct views, which constipate your consciousness with stinking thinking. Your host, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer. He's known for calling out politicians and telling them to cut the crap. You've seen him on virtually every television network and listened to him on Coast to Coast Radio. And now he's here to help you learn to fight for America. Culture, race, and American politics. They all have one thing in common. They all need to cut the crap. Now, here's your host, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer.
Okay, folks, welcome to The Crap. This one, we're going to do a history story, an amazing history story. We're going to take you back in time where there was a real-life battle over ballots, and it included bullets and guns and everything. By the way, Gail, you know, we're all family and friends here in this program. And Gail, we're so very sad for you and your loss of your family member. I know that has to hurt. We're very sad to hear that you lost a loved one. Anyway, I saw people talking about, I don't know if some of y'all went on a trip or whatever. Somebody was talking about going to Niagara Falls and we go, look, a squirrel. Saw black squirrels. Was that what I saw? Black squirrels? Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure that could have been done because I think he died with fentanyl and that black squirrel. Well, they made a statue of him. Am I correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about a real life battle over ballots. Don't be racist. What makes you think fentanyl's racist? I told you a story of a black squirrel. Look over here. Look at this. This is what's important. I guess you don't get word, humor, and accuracy. But I am racist. I have to admit it. I am absolutely racist. I am a human racist. I very much believe in one race, two sexes. That's me. I will not shy from my beliefs. I'm absolutely racist. For the human race, there's only one race. That's it, humans, period. There is no other race. I reject that. And there are only two sexes, male and female, period. That's it. Now, in the world, there's a lot of different flavors, but that's up to the person. But there's only two sexes. That's science. Now that you know I am so thoroughly racist and conservative, let's talk about ballots and bullets. Right? Because they kind of go hand in hand. If you don't want this bullshit of dead fentanyl-laced squirrels in the street that the media turns into a squirrel, look over here, look over here. If you don't want that, and you don't want, 8,000 genders, then you got to fix the ballot. Now, throughout history, we've had a lot of battles about the ballot. It's not something new. The only thing that is new in this whole equation is people finally started paying attention. That's it. That is the only thing that is new. Because it got thrust right in our faces all at the same time. All at the same time. Everything going to hell in a handbasket. But that was planned. That's why they did so many squirrels. Black Lives Matter, Antifa, all this other crap. It was all designed to make people look away from the most important thing they should have been looking at was the ballot. Then we got hoo-hooed in the hoo-hoo without dinner or a kiss, and it destroyed our nation. And now we're trying to fix it. Now, one of the greatest teachers always is the past. That's why I'm going to tell you the story about something in the past that happened in our country that you might not know. Okay, you might not know. We're gonna go back to the summer of 1946. I was almost 20 years away from being a glimmer in my father's eye, but you know what I'm talking about. And we're going to go to basically Middle East America, right? We're going to go to Tennessee. And in 1946 in Tennessee, the citizens felt like somehow in their county that the trouble that they were having in their county, which was continual, had somehow become systematic, right? You could be in a position where you could be walking down the street and accidentally bump into somebody on a Tuesday afternoon, and somehow by Friday night you'd be paying for it. I'm going to explain how. Kind of sounds like the system now. We pay for them to steal our systems. We pay for them to bring in illegals. We pay for them to millions and millions to do daycare, but nobody's there. It's all one big money laundering operation. So what happens is the older folks in this little Tennessee county felt like there was a time that the county's politics changed. Instead of just being good old people and good old folks, something changed. It hardened. It got meaner. It got meaner. Now, they pinpoint it going back in time, trying to understand the story. They pinpoint about sometime in the mid-1930s when Tennessee's political machine was really growing, okay? And Tennessee became subject to a more, should we say, political apparatus. And sometimes you don't associate this with the South, but it's true. They felt like during that time that the political machine, now we're not talking gears, we're talking people and crap and politics and politicians and all of that stuff. You know, the illusion of of politics, kind of the same stuff we've got going now. You know what I mean? The illusion. Well, they pinpointed it that happened about the mid-30s. And somehow in the smaller areas, and I always think like Buford T. Pusser, right? Or, you know what I'm saying? Smokey and the Bear or Smokey and the Bandit and all that stuff. That smaller places, somehow it felt like that the sheriffs, right? Or the mayors or whatever were starting to be chosen. Who's going to run these small towns? Right? So in 1936, when it first started creeping in, they had a sheriff that was going to eventually be the linchpin that played all this out. Okay? Because to the folks, it didn't sound like destiny. It sounded like it was about to play out. And the name that kept coming up at the time in 1936, not that you need to know it, was Paul Cantrell. He was well-connected. He was ambitious. He was backed by some sort of statewide power that actually made local opposition trying to run against him feel like a kid just throwing pebbles at a freight train coming by, right? Roscoe P. Coltrane. That's right. Who said that over in Rumble? Roscoe P. Coltrane. Now, what happened is when these machines move in, they don't really announce themselves. You know it. And sheriffs is one of the first places that happens. It used to be that way all across the South. And as you see, Soros and money, they infiltrate, sheriff's departments, county attorneys, secretary of states, etc. Well, what happened is this system began to first operate very quietly and very efficiently, the same way they do it to us now, very quietly, very efficiently, kind of like the courthouse clock, right? That everybody hears, but nobody questions, right? It's just there. So in this time, when this area of Tennessee got taken over, the blunt end of the stick, pop, 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 was law enforcement. Law enforcement took on a different meaning, right? So if the county was working like clockwork and all you hear is the ding, ding, ding of the courthouse clock and nobody paid attention to it, well, then the law system is what was doing it. See, the sheriff, the law enforcement, created a very interesting way to revenue their county. Yeah, revenuing their county. This may sound interesting, but what they did is Tennessee's created what was called the fee system. And they turned revenues, or in reverse, they turned arrest into revenues. That's right. This sheriff and his bossy would collect money from each person that they booked and or jailed and or release. Yeah. They'd find any way they could to arrest you for just anything. You would have to pay a fine for being booked. You'd have to pay a fine for being jailed. And you have to pay a fine for, being arrested. And by the way, it was all legal on paper. Wildly perverse in practice, but all legal. And a lot of towns do this. A lot of the speed traps along the highways, the old speed traps, they would do that because that's how they paid for their officers. And so what happened is it was a system where the man's paycheck depended upon how many bodies he could lock up in jail. That's right. The sheriff's paycheck was based upon how many bodies he could put in jail. Now think about this. This is where the definition of guilty really gets stretched. And boy, did it get stretched, right? Kind of like a Kamalizing. It was stretched to all Bolivian. So people talked about weekend tallies in this little county like they were weather reports, right? Trying to meet the quota, like trying to races how much was needed. And so what happened is the arrests were so frequent, being put in jail felt less like a place for criminals and felt more like a toll booth. Now, what these guys did as part of their racket is they would target travelers. You're not from around here, are you? Boy, you have pretty teeth. Well, it's a different movie. I'm confusing it. But travelers were the favorite targets because tourists did not know the local rules and they didn't have any time to fight it, right? At all. This is how the system went off of it. So the deputies would actually board buses that were passing through. Because remember, transit through that part of the country was primary. If you were traveling, you weren't really flying as much, right? You were passing through buses. And so these deputies, these sheriffs, this racket system would board these buses. They would drag half-awake passengers out of their seat, right? They would charge them with drunkenness, whether they had a drink or not. They would just say they were drunk. Then there'd be a fine, there'd be a fee and a quick payment, and then the traveler could leave town, just leave town and never come back. That's how they did this system, right? And they collected money like collecting taxes at the cash register. That's just the way it is. And so the city, after time, and this is kind of what happens today in all our political BS machinations that go on, all the people that say they have proof of election crimes or whatever, and you find out it's BS. It's just a way to be punitive, to make people duck their heads and go, oh, crap, I can't do anything about it. So what happens is you give up. And so what happened is the locals learned a lesson from this, and their lesson was just keep your heads down. Don't do anything. Don't challenge anything. Just keep your head down and just hope they didn't notice it. You know what I'm talking about. It's like maybe having a drunk step parent that always beats you, and you're just trying to stay out of their way. So this is how the whole county operated. So the folks, basically, they learned you don't argue at a roadhouse or a bar where the wrong person might be listening. They learned not to make any jokes about the sheriff at the barbershop, because you could be arrested for your words too, by the way. And they learned in small, steady ways what it meant when the badge wasn't merely law enforcement, but it was actually political muscle. Isn't it ironic how history repeats itself? And so what this did is it basically meant when it was political muscle, it meant a deputy could ruin your night just because they wanted to, and it would be so the deputy could get a paycheck. That's it. That's how far it went. Kind of like our politicians raping us today, but they're not raping us for $5 and $10 fees. It's, $5 trillion here, 10 trillion here. You know what I'm saying? So what happened is this began to, is the word metastasize, because it's a cancer. It spread from the jailhouse. Once they truly got a hold of the jailhouse, and it was kind of permanent, they allowed themselves to stay in office with permanence, and that permanence came from the elections. Right? It's kind of like we're seeing right now. Nobody really wants anything fixed. There's 8,000 different squirrels to chase. A lot of the system people don't pay attention to true rule of law because they don't want anything fixed. And the reason they don't want anything fixed is because as long as they can stay in office, they're part of the gravy train. And that's what they want, the gravy train. That's why you can be a Puerto Rican bartender, maybe making 20 grand a year. All of a sudden, somehow you become a politician, you get selected, in 5 years, you're worth 30 million bucks. You understand what the racket is? That's how the racket works. As long as you say what they want you to say, do what you want you to do, you're going to be paid well. And so what happened over time with this getting into the political machine, the county's voting rules and counting ballots basically came to feel more like a habit. You're just kind of going through it versus, your civic duty to do it. It was controlled theater. You know that we do that today. And a poll tax during voting then was manipulated. So here's what they did. They changed all of their voting precincts. A lot of the things that happens now, right? They changed their precincts. They consolidated precincts over here to have more power. And in those local offices, they made sure they had loyal men, right, that would go along with the gig. So everybody kind of in these politics, it was kind of written in stone, immovable. They were all just in on it after time. Didn't matter what happened in the vote, because they always blurred any information when it came to regular people wanting to know how the vote turned out. And you can imagine how it was, in the 30s and 40s. Hard enough anyway. And we live in the information age and we still don't understand it completely. But the one thing that was always easy to understand is they were putting people into power. Right? And it was just the power really never changed hands. And so people started to complain, which you got fined for. And interesting how history repeats itself. Cancel culture, your accounts get blocked, you get defunded, you get deplatformed, whatever the case may be. Same thing. This is back in the 1930s and 40s, folks. But even when a few people complained, those complaints went away really fast because they started punishing your family and friends. So federal investigators decided to look into these allegations. And so they came into the county during the 1940s. And with the government there, we're going to save you. We're going to help you out. Actual government official came in. Federal investigators came in to look. But nothing came of it. Now, you know why nothing came of it? Because nobody showed up to complain. See, showing up to complain about the rigged system basically meant identifying yourself. And so if you were a farmer or a shopkeeper, even though you have all these horrible, bitter thoughts about the system, the machine, you just accept that the machine was too connected to be touched. Now, a very interesting thing happened during this point in time. So I'm carrying you through the 30s. I'm bringing you into the 40s. And mid-40s, a little after, something happened. The county's young men, sons, that had been off at war, came back. And those sons, as the war ended, came home. And these were boys that could not be shamed into silence. Remember, they just fought for our country and our rights. And so these young guys, we're talking young guys, we're only talking 17, 18, 19, maybe 20s. You follow what I'm saying? They were men, true men, who their posture and their cutout in life was fashioned by gunfire. They've seen what tyranny looks like. They saw what happens when everything goes unchecked. And they were not at all worried about the local thugs that were hiding behind legal uniforms. You know what I'm saying? So some of these fellows came home hoping to kind of pick up their own life after being away for so long. But it's not that they weren't greeted like heroes in this particular county. They were greeted like targets. Yeah. See, the system had already been corrupted. And what the system got was just a lot more people to have to pay fines, right? And the one thing about these boys mustering out of the Army is they had pay in their pockets. And so what happened is in this county, it became predatory again. And all these guys started getting notices, getting fines, the whole bit. And so what happened is these military boys started complaining. And at first they were kind of quiet, right? They're talking to their families, kind of still or whatever. And calm doesn't mean that they accepted it. That's not true at all. They just kind of had restraint. You know, these guys had been through a war. And so they learned all of the stories that had been missed overseas, all the crapola that had been going on in their county while they were overseas. And then they watched and they look at these deputies, you know, elected officials kind of swaggering around town. They saw people being in fear just by the low gestures, like a man walking down the street and lowering his eyes when a patrol car rolled by, or a waitress in the coffee shop going quiet when politics came up. And these veterans began to ask themselves, it was really simple on its face, but it would end up being the fuse, is this really what we fought for? Local government at its best. They come back to home after fighting a war for the freedom of all of us. And they basically said, is this really what we fought for? Is this the home we fought for? Because they came back to a system that was corrupt. And so these veterans kind of started meeting on their own over kitchen tables and stuff and talking about it. They talked about reform, but not in kind of a lofty, arrogant language. They just talked about basic things, like there should be no free fee-driven arrest. Right? That if the sheriff and these guys, the way they get themselves paid is to charge people with crap, they said that's got to go away. And we got to stop ignoring the open secret that this is just really payoffs. And the way these guys stay in office is the machine controls the vote. And I'm not talking about electronics. I'm talking about the political machine, the media machine, etc. The machines controlled the office, the politics, the voting. They controlled the count. And so they decided to do for themselves what wasn't being done, is they decided to challenge the machine. And you got to remember, I'm not saying it's the machine. I'm not saying that crap. I'm talking the political machine, the corruption, etc. And so what they did is they organized an all GI nonpartisan ticket. They said, look, we're going to fix this. And so they promised an honest election. They ran for all the county offices when they came back. And where all these politicians felt like, was hereditary titles, passed down between families. They say, crap, bullshit to this, right? And it was kind of a narrative at the time. It felt naive that, to some people to think that they could overthrow the system. And by the way, most people were afraid of it. But these guys ran. They ran. They said, this is my home. This is not what we fought for. This is not our country. And this is not the way it works. So as election day approached, the atmosphere in the county kind of tightened. The machine didn't need speeches to threaten these politicians. It had its deputies. It had the jail. And it already had the habit of getting what it wanted, because that was the system. So the veterans themselves, because they created their own party there, they recruited their own poll watchers, men who would stand close enough to see and to document and prevent the old tricks were being done. They didn't plan for violence. That was not it. They just planned for visibility. That's originally what poll workers were there for, visibility, to keep all hell from breaking loose, like the Black Panthers and stuff, that kind of poll watcher. Because they knew that this political BS machine's greatest weapon wasn't really force. It was just doing things in darkness, doing things where it couldn't be seen. Does that sound so 2020 to you? Yeah. Putting cardboard up on the windows so nobody can see. Yeah, I've always told you history repeats itself. So on August 1st, 1946, that was when all of this happen. It's sad from the people at the time. It says kind of like everybody in the county was holding their breath. The polling places were filled in the county. The veterans watched, and the deputies watched back. Think of both sides kind of looking at each other. One, are criminal rat bastards, right? The other ones are fighting men that said, we fought against tyranny. We know where tyranny heads, and this is not what we fought for. So they decided to do it. So what happened is, as the day wore on, the old pattern that was there began to show itself again. Intimidation, people getting in fights, arrest. And so they kind of knew it was signs that the machine intended to run the election the same way they intended to run everything else. So they're watching it happen all over again. The machine was just going to keep itself into power. And so tension turned to anger, and then the anger turned into certainty. That's how they described it when it happened. And boy, then came the act that snapped it all, like a rope being pulled too tight. Boom. What happened was, after the polls had closed, the ballot boxes, right? The ballot boxes, especially from the precincts where the GI party, where the returning men from war knew were strong, where they had strong chances for office in those precincts, they were gathered up by the deputies. Yeah. The ones supposed to be protecting it, they were gathered up. See how history repeats itself? They were gathered up by the deputies, and they were taken to the county jail for counting. This was in a time when the ballots would go to the county courthouse for counting. These rat bastards, right, took them for some reason to the county jail for counting. And what they didn't allow is they did not allow any public access. And of course, the end of the story, all the votes were for Biden, but they suppressed that story. But that's another one. But anyway, there was no public access at all to the ballots being counted at the jail. So as you can imagine, in a small county, word traveled fast, right? Nothing like rural wireless. Rural wireless is the rural county talking, right? It just took off like wildfire, even faster than the official announcement. They've taken the boxes. So the rat bastards had taken the boxes. We've always been dealing with rat bastards. And in that moment, those returning veterans who'd spent years and years fighting for the country they loved, getting shot at, across the ocean, fighting to stop crooked power. Sends a chill down my spine when I say that. Fighting to stop crooked power across the ocean from home, looked at their hometown and basically said, this is crooked power. And they knew when the ballots disappeared behind the jailhouse bars, they'd never come back out. And that's kind of the circumstance that led up to this event, because the ballot boxes were behind the walls of a jail that nobody else could get there. And these men finally said, enough is a freak enough. You know, it was a small town election. A lot of small towns elections at the time were very easy. They could be decided by handshakes or church lawn talk, right? You just have a few tired poll workers, you know, going home. And that'd be it. It was just that. But here in McMinn County, Tennessee, McMinn, M-C-M-I-N-N, McMinn County, Tennessee. This is the summer of 1946. The whole town was just the size of a few streets. The stakes to these men, to this community, felt bigger than the courthouse itself. And so it kind of started before Election Day, like I told you. Everybody in this county knew something was wrong. They knew that these guys were raping the county of money. They called them assessments, by the way. Assessments. We're going to assess you a fine. And it was bullshit hiding behind badges is what it was. And then they got there through politics. People just kept on paying these fees, right? Because they just didn't want to do it. It's keep your heads down. Like I told you, just keep your heads down. And here comes these guys that have fought for the country overseas, fought tyranny, understand what tyranny is, right? And so actually, as you can imagine, this day all hell broke loose. If you could put yourself in these guys coming home and saying, this is not my home anymore, and this is the way it shouldn't be run, you can kind of reading the tea leaves, whatever you want, poll workers were actually arrested. Yeah. Voters in line would be charged with pushing somebody. The deputies would be hovering there. They would arrest them. A poll worker would ask a question about, well, that's not right. They would arrest the people, right? And there were, it went to fisticuffs. You ever heard that before? Fisticuffs. One veteran was struck, went to jail. Another veteran in the process was shot. That was probably a lot of the part of it is one of them was shot. But when those ballots left, driven to the county jail, everybody knew. Think of all the secret counting rooms that we witnessed in 2020. Everybody knew we're not going to get the right result. So the people started gathering in front of the jail first. So you got these GIs that had put everything on the line for our country. They know the ballots didn't go to the courthouse. They knew the ballots went to the jail. It's kind of, what happens in darkness, right? We experienced it in 2020. So the GIs and some of the people that had gathered started demanding, bring the boxes out, count them in public, bring the boxes out, count them in public. Now, and I know that is not an unreasonable request. Basically, it's the foundation of a free election. Can we agree? Bring the boxes out. Let's count them in public. We need to see what is going on. We need to understand. We need to see what you see. But a corrupt system, in many times, is certainly not going to disinfect with sunlight, right? Doing it all out in the open, counting it all out in the open, and being able to audit it, being able to understand it, is the basis of a free election. It's the only way that people can trust the count. Can we agree? It's the only way trust account. So they're yelling at the jailhouse. Nobody answered them. They weren't, oh, you're not wearing your mask. You got to stay social distance 6 feet from these soldiers because they might bring infection with them. None of that crap. They just ignored it, thinking it would go away. And what happened? Not what I'm recommending. I'm just telling you a story. What happened is these veterans went home, young boys, who had fought for the country. They went home and they got their guns. The story goes that they got some from pawn shops. They borrowed them from other family members. I know when my father came home from Korea, he was able to bring his weapon with him, which I love to this day. But they basically gathered up their guns. That is not what I'm recommending. Just listen to the story. It's not a romantic moment. It's a very grim and desperate moment, fueled by the belief that if they let the ballot boxes vanish into the jails, everything they fought for would be reduced to a joke told by men who had never risked anything. Isn't that funny? A lot of our laws are from people who really don't serve their country, or from social justice people who can't even change a tire, but going to tell us how to change our country for the better. Well, these guys said, horseshit, we're not going to be reduced to a joke. So you got to imagine this jail, right? It's kind of a square building. And you know how these are, they're stone and brick, and they got these little narrow windows and stuff. So the deputies didn't worry about the protesters outside. They believed they could hold it. They had bars and bricks. And by the way, they had guns too. Don't forget that. They had guns too. And what those guys are doing are fighting for a corrupt system to stay in place so they could keep manipulating the system. So inside, they watched all these men gather from the outside. It was men they recognized, men who had gone off to war as boys and come back as something harder to intimidate. The first shots cracked in the air and turned the night into a different kind of battlefield. It's true. I just want you to listen to the story, because all hell broke loose in this little town. Not in the Antifa bullshit theater way. That's something different. But in people saying enough is enough. And this is why history, you should know it. People ducked behind cars and brick corners, glass shattered. There was the kind of the metallic smell, you know this, right, of gunfire when there's damp heat and stuff. A lot of people tried to shout out reason. But reason doesn't travel very far when bullets are flying. This went on for hours. Hours. In a blur of fear and stubbornness, the veterans were determined, but they were not invincible. The deputies were fortified, but they were not untouchable. And then, in this melee of bullshit and bullets and ballots, somebody got the bright idea to bring dynamite. Yeah. Someone brought dynamite. That's an ugly word in the middle of a worse situation. But they decided it would be a tool to end the standoff without rushing the door. The blast rattled the jail. It wasn't a movie explosion. It was just a concussive slam that made people flinch and cover their heads. Dust and fragments went everywhere. The deputies inside realized the tide had turned, and those soldiers were not going away. And so those deputies kind of had to come to Jesus meeting. They had to decide about the risk of staying. Was this worth dying for a set of ballots, or boxes of ballots? And for everybody, it became the reality that was too hard to dismiss. And so the county jail doors open. The ballot boxes came out. Now, there was still tension. It didn't dissolve. Everyone kind of still held their breath, because anything could break at a moment's time. And then the boxes were simply picked up and moved to where they should have been all along, at the county courthouse, in the open, with public eyes. The counting began under fearful and watchful faces, under the kind of scrutiny you can imagine, right? That makes cheating very difficult, and denying that you were cheating very hard to do. In the end, the results were announced. All of the veterans candidates won. But they didn't wake up the next day to a perfect place, because that's not how it is. That's not how places changed. What changed was something shifted. The old machine that was so confident that it could just steal any election, and to be bold enough to take it behind jail doors, lock it up, had been forced into daylight. That's the moral of the story. Not guns, not dynamite, but the system. The corrupt system had been forced into daylight. And this county learned a lesson, right? It would repeat for years. And this is it, folks. You have to understand, some people use the word democracy, but our constitutional republic is fragile. Our constitutional republic is so fragile that a box of paper can bring it down, that a box of paper can put everybody on edge. See, everybody tends to think in terrorists and bombs and all this other stuff. Whether you like it or not, it is the war of a million paper cuts. And the only way our great republic survives, because that's what we are. Some people use the word democracy interchangeably. I do not. I don't want to use the word democracy. I want to remind you we are a constitutional republic. Words float and change over years, but you need to know it. A box of paper changes everything. It is a box of paper that determines whether you live under that bullshit rule for a few years or for the rest of your life. So in that day, it wasn't a clean victory. Wasn't a story you tell without discomfort. It kind of became a warning sign across small towns, right? In a system where, while the boys were gone to fight, people began to believe their votes didn't matter. And when people believe their votes don't matter, no, I want you to pay attention. This is very key. When people believe their votes don't matter, which is what the system's trying to tell you. We can agree on that, right? We can agree that the system is working their ass off to tell us that your vote doesn't matter. How many of your family and friends have said that? Our vote doesn't matter. You know what the cause and effect is when you can teach people that their vote don't matter? Well, it's actually what the system wants. See, people stop acting like neighbors and they start acting like enemies. That's part of why they want you to see some of these acts out in the open. That's part of why they want you to throw your hands up and say, well, my vote, I'm not voting, my vote doesn't count anyway. Because the cause and effect that history teaches us is when people truly believe their vote does not matter, they stop acting like neighbors and they become enemies. When the ballot box is treated like property instead of a public trust, when the ballot box is treated like property, think of the Somali shit going on in Minnesota right now. When the ballot box is treated like property, not the public trust, it is the town that pays the price. And that's where we are. This really happened. McMinn, M-C-M-I-N-N County. It's on the historical record. And they started slowly by taking over politicians. Same thing they're doing now. It's the same formula it's always been. You get a few rat bastards in, you get them addicted to power, you get them addicted to money, and then you can do anything. And those systems, when you have that kind of system in place, you know what fills the void of people having pride in their neighborhoods? People really being neighbors and taking care of each other. What happens? Gambling, drugs, liquor, prostitution. Bang. The protection racket explodes. This was 1946. And in 2020, the system did the same thing. And even though back then it got federal attention, the DOJ did an investigation of election fraud in McMinn County. They did it in 1940. Now, I want you to pay attention. Right? Back then, they weren't investigating voter fraud because the precincts were so small, the way they should be, because you were voting in person the way it should be, because everybody knew each other in the precincts the way it should be. They went in to do an investigation of electoral fraud, not voter fraud bullshit. Now, they did these elections in 1940, in 1942, and in 1944. And they had no resolutions. Do you know why? Because the system shunned everybody, ostracized everybody, penalized everybody to death, that when the DOJ came in to document electoral fraud, nobody would talk for fear of retribution. It's the same today, folks, just on a bigger scale. But our DOJ doesn't investigate electoral fraud, which is what we need to do, because that was racketeering. What you were hearing about in this town is racketeering, what the DOJ can enforce. But that's why they focus on the little bitty voter fraud. The machine became corrupt. One little bitty building decided, we're going to decide what happens here. We're going to take money. And the people said, horse shit. The people said, we're not going to stand for this. Wasn't BLM and Antifa and saying, I want to cut my wanker off. You give me the money. It wasn't that kind of stuff. It was because they knew in 1946 that if this continued to repeat itself, it would catch on like a cancer, county to county. It would metastasize across the country. And unfortunately, folks, that's what's happened. That's why you always know, and I'm just going to give you my definition. If there's a whistleblower involved that cannot be identified, it's horseshit. It's a con. If there's experts that can testify to it, oh, I'm sorry, they can't testify in court because they're under witness protection or can't really. I call bullshit. Just like when they put cardboard and posters up over windows so you can't see the ballots, I call bullshit. When somebody makes a claim they said they were going to steal the election, says, don't worry about freaking Trump, we can make sure, but you can't produce any evidence, I call bullshit. The same bullshit goes on today. Now, the moral of this story is not get your guns. And in fact, if you're listening to people about all this Tina Peters bullshit, we gotta get 20,000, 30,000 people. We got to get this and the material. You're being set up. See, because the system's learned. They know how to set up people. And they will set up people. The bottom line is you have one warrior to worry about in your life. That is you. You have one person to have accountability for in your life. That is you. And you have an accountability to your nation, your neighbors, your friends, and family is to always search for and find the truth and tell the truth. And then you have an obligation to the soul of America that when people are spreading bullshit, you call out the truth and you be consistent at it and you be diligent at it. And that's where the war is fought. You don't let people get away with posts that says, well, I infiltrated Antifa, and it all be bullshit, $9 billion of lawsuits, and the system reward is that person's going to run for governor. Don't fall for the bullshit. Our war to save our incredible republic comes down to each one of us wielding the weapons of truth fearlessly. And that is all it requires. But if you buy into the bullshit, if you buy into the conspiracy, well, it wasn't peer reviewed, it can't, you are part of the problem. You know truth when you see it. You don't need some elaborate story. You don't need some grand evil Satan in Venezuela. You need a gut check. Are you really in this fight? Because you know what? The truth is totally transparent. The truth is so obvious it'll hit you in the head. You don't need some convoluted bullshit story encompassing CIA, FBI, whistleblowers, and bullshit. That's the system. Trust your eyes. Trust your inner voice. Trust your own judgment, looking at truth. Knowing how to fight truth. But when you fight for truth, folks, you got to get into the fight. Because just like a great republic can die, incredible truths can die on the vine too, because nobody wants to get into the fight. Why? Because they're worried what other people will think of them. So they just want to be quiet. They don't want to get into this fight. And you know that's how the system wins. Share this program. It's a true bit of our history. And the fight still goes on today. And it still comes down to every single citizen to decide to do something for themselves that's honest, ethical, teachable, and truthful. And you don't need some fucking 6-degree polynomial to convince you it's real. You can see real evidence with your own eyes. And it doesn't require a whistleblower or a mathematician to figure it out. It just is what it is. Question is, will you join the fight? I love you all. Take care.
Our courts are based on clear and convincing evidence. Want convictions? Want justice? For what happened in the 2020 election? Then we need your help. Not fixing 2020 will damn our nation forever. The decision you make in the next few moments could decide whether we ever get our elections fixed or not. Here's why. Trump campaign and allies filed 64 different lawsuits. They all went down in flames. 100% of these cases were presented on "It's the machines," or "The machines changed the votes," or "The voting company executive said he would make sure Donald J. Trump would not win." They all went down in flames. Why? You can't bring theories to court as evidence. No supposed Zoom call or six-degree polynomial math theory or census data is or ever will be proof of fraud. You can't bring theories to court as evidence. Here's why. In both civil and criminal law, the side making a claim carries the burden of proof, and prosecutors must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Without physical or otherwise verifiable evidence, a case cannot meet this high threshold. Physical evidence is the key. The question is, did anyone get relevant, reliable, provable, testable, and duplicatable evidence of what really happened in the 2020 general election? And the answer is yes, absolutely. The full forensic audit of Maricopa County, Arizona is the only evidence-gathering work which gathered relevant, reliable, provable, testable, and duplicatable evidence of what really happened in the 2020 general election. Evidence so damning that the system, the deep state, and those who pull the strings of this country have fought to keep it hidden and have hoped to have it be forgotten to time. Almost $3 million invested in time, funds, and efforts to unlock that which the system wanted hidden. But now, that evidence is in danger of being lost forever. So if you want what happened in the 2020 election fixed, then we need your help. Please donate to protect and secure this historic evidence. With the 2026 midterms coming up, the system is going to try to lame duck President Trump and then most likely introduce new impeachment proceedings. This is the evidence which will help win the war which is surely to come. We need to keep Maricopa County full forensic investigation and archive secure and ongoing. So if you want what happened in the 2020 election fixed, then we need your help. Please donate to protect and secure this historic evidence. We need your help securing the full forensic audit archives. Don't allow the only testable, objective, and reliable 2020 election evidence fall into obscurity. Millions were spent on getting it documented and tested. This is historic evidence. Not fixing 2020 will damn our nation forever. The historic Maricopa County full forensic audit effort processed 20,895,610 digital and forensic images of varying formats, resulted in 208 million individual evidence-proof files. The system processed over 58 billion forensic measurements, resulting in over 2 trillion individual base computations. No hopium, no hype, just hardcore forensic evidence. Please make sure the Maricopa County full forensic audit archives survive. Donate now. So if you want what happened in the 2020 election fixed, then please donate to protect and secure this historic evidence. We can't do it without you. We need you. America needs you. Our future needs you. Please donate now. Not fixing 2020 will damn our nation forever. Please donate now.